So as Austin said, I've got about 15 years of experience doing marketing at different companies like InView, Reputation.com, Get Around Complete Solar. I did a small book on AdWords. I have an engineering degree with a minor in stats, and that stats has proved very useful in my marketing. There's my Twitter handle. So one of the themes that I'm going to talk about today is risk and managing risk. So this, I don't know if you can see it, is a very high bridge in New Zealand. And that's me getting ready to jump off the bridge. And you can see I'm mitigating the risk. If you look at my ankles there's actually a big rubber cord tied to it. And I managed to do it, and I'm still here today. So extreme tests and managing your risk. That's the theme for today. You're supposed to jump head first. Jumping feet first is a bad idea when you bungee jump, as you might imagine at the bottom. But yeah. So another risk reduction. All the numbers I'm going to talk to you today are illustrative purposes only, and they're not actual numbers from the companies. So that's a risk reduction statement. What we're going to go over today, I'm going to talk to you about how we typically think about testing today, and what I'm calling extreme testing, how that works. And we've got a challenge that I'm going to talk to all of you about to come up with your own extreme test, and we'll talk about, and I'll give you some practical examples that I've seen in my many years of testing. So typically, the way that we typically approach testing today is we've come up with a bunch of interesting ideas that we think are going to move the needle, and we go about and test them, and they take a week or two to prepare, and then we start running them, and then depending upon how many conversions we get a result, and it takes a little while. So we test a blue button, or we get a little, it doesn't work, and we lose 2%, so we throw that away, or we test a geo-specific landing page, we get a bump of 3%. Our mobile-friendly email didn't work, and we set it up wrong, and we lost 5% conversion, so we throw that away. We've got a great big win with a price comparison chart, and we've got a huge boost of 10%, that's great. And we go through, and we're doing email subject lines, and text messages, and bundling offers, and tagline doesn't make any difference. Your logo actually made it worse. Your payment page, you got a little bit of a boost there. And this is pretty typical of the kind of tests that we like to do, and we see little bits of improvement here and there. But while we're doing this, most of us I think are in smaller companies, and we're burning dollars and time. And so you're burning through your money and time as you're doing these small tests, and you haven't solved, the business isn't growing as fast as it needs to. So that's pretty important. So the traditional problems are the amount of time it takes for us to learn what's working and what's not, how much money we invest in those tests, and then the sample size needed to detect changes. I've worked at companies where I was getting 800,000 regs a month, and I've worked at companies where we were doing tens of sales per month. And that sample size problem is a huge one, and you have to be conscious of how many signals you're getting, how much noise. And if you're only getting tens of conversions a month, it's going to be pretty, if you want to get a statistically significant test, it's going to take you many months to do in a typical fashion. And so you've got to make your bets correctly. Extreme. So here's the challenge for all of you. Well, we're going through a bunch of different ideas and examples tonight. I want you each to think of your own business. You've got your own marketing background. You know your customers. What extreme test can you think of that might be interesting to test? And then at the end, we'll ask if there are any brave volunteers to share their ideas. Maybe we'll talk about risks and how those ideas might work. So, challenge. Think of something throughout the talk today. So one of the companies I worked at was called InView. They're a 3D social network based in Mountain View. This is the company where we're getting 800,000 regs a month, so high volume. The customers, the way it works is customers buy credits with real dollars, and then they get those credits and they dress up and they buy furniture and high heels and necklaces and hairstyles and chat to each other. And so real dollars turn into virtual credits. And typically, we have daily revenues of 40K, 35K. Our daily revenues would bounce around in the mid 30s, 40s. Occasionally, we'd run a sale on the credits, and we'd offer 20% off. And you can see we got a big boost in revenue for that day when we did a 20% off sale. And there are issues around, so They're price sensitive. There's a little signal there that they're price sensitive. There are issues because there was a secondary market for these credits, and so you couldn't flood the market or you'd get rampant inflation and all kinds of things happening. So there were practical implications of how much discount we would sell because it would affect the market for these credits. So an extreme test might be to offer 50% off, as we did in the title. So any ideas how effective do you think 50% off might have been? Any?
Way up.
Good guess, Austin. Way up. Yeah, so we did 50% off, and we had the biggest revenue day we'd ever seen in the company by a factor of 3. So it was a pretty big risk because we had to get all the key stakeholders to buy it. They thought it was crazy. It influenced a lot of different departments, but by running that, we managed to make a massive improvement in our daily revenue, and continuing on with that, we were able to continue those sales on a fairly regular basis, and that was incremental revenue, so it was a huge deal. So the important characteristics of that, we want to identify a change that's a test that's a game changer, right? Going from 20 to 25% or 10 to 15%, you might have got a bump out of that. But going to 50%, it was a big deal, and it moved the deal a lot, moved the dial a lot. The other piece of that is you have to think about risk. When you're making a big change, you need to think about what are all the different things that could go wrong and what would happen if you did. In this case, it was only a one-day sale, so it's a limited time offer, and so that reduced our risk. There are other ways of limiting risk in terms of different tests you do, in terms of limiting it to a target population or a geography. So you need to think through the worst-case scenarios and plan out what would happen if something went wrong. And then you need to get buy-in from the key stakeholders. And the best way to get buy-in is to show that you've thought through a lot of that risk mitigation and what the consequences would be if something went wrong. So it was such a good deal that our company beat a goal that we'd hit, and 17 of the people in the company got mohawks. We hired a hairdresser who came in. You can see it was pretty. There's some of them were better than others. It was fun. My daughter was very embarrassed when I took her to school the next day. Okay, another InView example. Sex sells. So we had very high volume. As I said, hundreds of thousands of regs per month. And the sexy dress-up clothes was a large part of what the InView was about. And so this was a Valentine's Day banner that one of our designers put together. Decent click-through rate, acted similar to other ones. We did, the way we did it was we'd have an open forum and the designers and everybody would brainstorm and come up with other ideas. So this was the idea he came up with. A little bit sexier, still PG, still clothed. And it had a massive 110% increase in the click-through rate and 30% increase in the conversion rate. That background changed the image. And that was consistent, and we had a very hard time beating that banner. And it caused a lot of internal discussion because there are brand implications for how sexy you get and what people think of your company, but it was very hard to argue with these numbers. Massive increase in click-through and conversion rates by that fairly subtle change at the back. I'll wait till you got it? Complete Solar. So Complete Solar, where I've worked recently, very different business. So we've talked about massive number of registrations online, avatar chat. This is tens or hundreds of transactions a month. A lot of competition. When people are getting solar put on their homes, so what we do is we sell residential solar systems to people throughout California. And when people are talking about their home, it's very personal, so you're very protective of your home. We did a lot of focus groups to sort of understand what people were thinking about when they were thinking about solar. There were a lot of different companies selling solar. There's one or two big ones and a ton of medium and small ones. So there's a lot of different messaging going out. And so because there's so much messaging, people are confused and they don't know what to believe. So what could we think of that would move, what was an extreme test that could move the dial for complete solar? So we thought of, what if we gave them a money-back guarantee, or 365-day solar trial is how we implemented it. No one else in the industry had done this. When we did it in focus groups and mentioned, we talked about the attributes of our company, and people were very skeptical and wary, and then we mentioned a money-back guarantee or a trial, suddenly all their worries evaporated. And they said, oh, I believe everything you just told me if you're going to give me a money-back guarantee. So this massively reduces the consumer's perceived risk by giving them a money-back guarantee. It has a huge company risk. For every person who decides that they want to have their solar system removed, it was going to cost us about $10,000 to do all the labor and remove the panels and all the pieces of that. So this was pretty risky. What we did to limit the risk. So we used a bunch of channels. We did direct mail, newspaper, online display. We did some radio. But our risk reduction technique was we limited it to Visalia, California. And I don't know if you all know your California geography, but Visalia is a town in the Central Valley of about 100,000 people. So our risk mitigation method for this was that we were only offering it in a single town, and we could turn it on and off fairly quickly in that town. So that was the risk mitigation that allowed us to sell it internally to the stakeholders and get people to buy in and try it. The result, we only got a handful of new leads. So as a top line lead generation, demand generation, it didn't work, which was disappointing. So what did we learn from it? So reducing the perceived risks, which is what we did with this, it doesn't work for demand generation, which was our intent. Our outlay and risk was constrained, but we think that for future tests, we need to focus on top-level benefits before tackling objections. So this would tackle the objections, but it doesn't create that demand for solar at the top. So I'm giving this failure example because failure happens, right? Extreme tests fail at the same rate other stuff fails. When they succeed, you can move the dial on a conversion, but even when you do extreme tests, 9 out of 10 of the tests I've ever tried marketing fail. And that's going to happen in extreme stuff as well. So if you're going to test, you need to look for the big movements, because if you're failing 9 times out of 10 on small movements and you get one win, it's not enough. And this is an example. You guys may have seen this video. It's fun to watch. I'll just share it with you now. This is a Elon Musk failure. Big risk, extreme risk. Here we go. Good idea. Risk mitigation is you're a long way away. And we're trying to stay upright, but we didn't. And here's the, oh. Extreme risk, sometimes it fails. Okay, a little interlude there. Rockets are fun. Here's another test. Trying out new channels. Oh, excuse me. We didn't stop our YouTube. Okay. So trying out new channels. So another way that you can experiment in an extreme way is when you find a new channel or something opens up that's fairly novel. So at Complete Solar, we were doing about 8,000 outbound calls a day to our leads, asking them if they were interested in solar, and old leads and new leads. Most of them, as you might guess, resulted in no answer. Now, let's do a poll in the room. How many of you, when you make a call, leave a voicemail? We've got three people, okay. What do you do most of the time instead of leaving a voicemail? Text message, maybe? Yeah. Why? How about we try it? So what we did was we automated it. So on those 8,000 calls, if we got a no answer, we would send a text to them immediately in a friendly way. This is Corey for Complete Solar. We just tried calling. Please call or text me back when you're free, or stop to be removed. Instant text, like you would, like a normal person would, right? You hang up and you don't leave a message because no one listened to voicemail. You send a text, and we got a 10% increase in appointments set. So we did an A/B test, so we blocked it out. We sent that to half of the people, and we measured it. It's a huge bump by using that text message mechanism, which we all are using, but is not typical for companies, right? Especially B2B companies. So taking advantage of new channels is a big thing. There are some caveats around text messaging if you want to go out and try text messaging tomorrow. We only sent it to people who we'd got an explicit opt-in. We had a bunch of lead generation ways, and we had the language saying you agree to opt in to receive text messages and automated phone calls. And it's best practice to also include stop instructions in your message. So text messaging is very powerful, interruption-based, but you have to be very careful about how you use it. We also only sent one every 30 days. Although we'd call you a lot, we'd only send you one message a month, unless you told us otherwise. That was a pretty good one. Brand can have a huge effect. You've all seen Coke, Pepsi comparisons. So that's Pepsi leveraging Coke's brand to get a boost. So brand is a huge power, very powerful tool. So I worked at a company called, ran a club called Star Club Rewards, which was part of Experian at the time. And it was a shopping membership club. The way it worked is you would pay $15 a month, and you get 20% cash back on all your online shopping that you did through the club. So you could go to Macy's and Target and Nordstrom, and all your online shopping, we'd top it up at the end of the month and give you a 20% cash back. And we'd charge you $15 a month for that. Most people didn't use it, and so the $15 a month fee covered the people who did use it, and some people got $500 back. It was a very interesting club. Our primary distribution channel was offer walls. So what's an offer wall? An offer wall in games or many websites is you can complete an offer and you get credits or points or power-ups or whatever it is. So we were an offer on one of these offer walls, typically about the third one down. You can see that the third one down is the generic Star Club Rewards. And we would also offer you a $50 gift card if you signed up. And this was working pretty well. So our hypothesis was, can we use the brands of the gift cards that we're giving out to boost how well this is working? So what we tried was a $50 Kmart gift card. This is dated. This is when Kmart was a big deal still. But a $50 Kmart gift card. So we had the generic one, and we had a click-through rate of 1.9%, so decent. We tried a generic version with the Kmart colors and got a 20% boost, so pretty significant. Any guesses on $50 Kmart gift card and what kind of boost that might get? Louder. 200%, that's a good guess. Anybody? At the back on your phone, you have an idea? What's your idea? I caught you. 50, yeah, okay. 400% improvement. So we've got a click-through rate of 9.65. I've never seen, that's the biggest improvement I've ever seen on a simple test like that in my career testing. It was massive. So the Kmart, that brand, helped distinguish us on that offer wall and conveyed legitimacy from their brand, and that rubbed off on us. So it was a big deal. There's a footnote to this story, though. So you can see our weekly volume was bumping around. We made the change, more than doubled our volume, and then it dropped down to 0. Anybody have any theories on what happened that next week? So pulled forward future revenue, good guess, but no, that wasn't it. This was an unlimited supply of people. This was across the state, so that wasn't what it was. It was an impulse buy, so there's still a huge number of people if possible.
Cease and desist.
Cease and desist from Kmart is a very good one. I have seen those, but Walmart is much more litigious than Kmart, and no, it wasn't that. Bankruptcy? No, it wasn't that either. It wasn't. This is prior to that. So this floored me. So our Kmart gift card was about third in the offer wall there. We were paying out $22 per acquisition. The top guy on the wall was paying out $100 for their credit card app. So what was happening was people were coming on, they were seeing Kmart, and they were completing our offer. They were not completing the $100 credit card offer at the top. And the guy who ran the offer wall was making less money on his page. So to optimize his page, the amount of money he got per page view, he kicked us off, but he made more money because we were taking away his expensive clicks. So we were a victim of our optimization. So pretty interesting result there. Yeah. Very sad, actually. So the association with the Kmart brand had a huge effect in distinguishing our offer from the crowd. Caveats: brands are very protective of how they're used. For example, Google won't allow you to use brand names other than your own in text ads or display ads. That's Google's rules. You are allowed to do, it's legal to do comparisons to big brands on your own website and or other channels. Think about Pepsi versus Coke. But many big brands will ask you to stop. And so it's powerful, but it's fraught with issues. So caveat emptor. Another huge area where you can make massive differences in your conversion rates: pricing. Pricing and discounts are where I've seen the biggest movements in terms of increasing your revenue per user. So this is back to Star Club Rewards again. So we did some testing on a monthly subscription price. So we offered 4 different prices, split the people up: $9.95, $14.95, $19.95, $24.95, and you can see the acquisition rates decreased pretty predictably. The $9.95 worked the best, gave us a 14% lift. $19.95 was 14% worse. $24.95, 30% worse. But our first month revenue, because the price is higher, you're getting more revenue out of the more expensive one. Okay, what should I do? Here's my data. What should I do? Anybody? Come on, what would you do if this was the data you got? Eric? Ask for referral information, okay. That's good. Yeah, okay, referral information is good. Oh, good one. And if you've been to any of the Agile marketing meetups before, and there's a guy who's a big proponent of cohorts and lifetime value, yes. Paul. So we looked at month 1, month 2 retention, and then we modeled out the lifetime value. And so people are more likely to cancel if they're on a higher dollar value. So the cancellation rates on those higher dollar values was significant. And when you model that out over the lifetime, you called it. So the $9.95 one actually had the highest lifetime value. And so if we'd gone on month 1, we'd have made the wrong decision. So by looking at a couple of months, we're able to model out what that lifetime value curve looks like. And $9.95 became the champion. So that's a good call. So the difficulty on doing price modeling, especially on subscription, is you don't get a good answer until you've got 2 or 3 months worth of data, especially since we had a 30-day trial on this. So it makes the tests much longer to get good results, but huge amounts of movement in there. And so the difference between $30 and $46 on lifetime value, massive. So what we did after that is I talked at the beginning about sort of normal testing, and you're testing the blue button and the payment page, and extreme testing. So extreme testing is where you get the big movements. There is still a place for optimization. So we've seen in this pricing test that the pricing moves the needle, and somewhere between $9.95 and $14.95 is probably the sweet spot. And we're settled on $9.95 as our current champion. But once you found a variable that moves the needle, that's the time when you go into optimization. So we started to run other tests at other price points, and we ended up actually in Star Club Rewards at $12, and $12 actually beat out $9.95. So we found something that moved the dial, and then we honed in on where the sweet spot was. So the next thing about optimization is once you found your winner, you then deploy it to the full population. You found it, you know what the risks are, deploy it to the full population, and then you optimize, and that's getting the $12 one. Okay, right, pulling it all together. So test extreme hypotheses, because those are the ones that are going to move the needle, but then limit your risk. So you want to find something, you want to think of what is going to move the dial more than 2 or 5%. What can possibly make a big difference? And then when I do that, how do I make sure that I don't bankrupt the company when I test it? And you can use customer segments or geography or time-based offers. There's all kinds of ways to limit the risk, but that's very important. Pricing and offers are fertile experimental areas. I recommend that you really think through those. They're much harder to implement, pricing especially, because especially if people talk to each other and things, pricing becomes tricky, but it's very powerful. Okay, challenge portion of the talk. Whose creative juices have been flowing? Who's got an idea that of a test that they think they might test at home? Who's willing to share it with us? Yep.
So I'm Zendesk.
Okay.
And thinking about we have a pricing program. And more. Can I just speak really loudly? You guys hear me back?
To the video, please.
That?
To the video, please. You might have to handle it.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Good.
Hi, Laura from marketing. And we have a subscription program, and I'm trying to figure out what would be big to bring in a new batch of people. We tend to get people in at a lower subscription price, and there are varying subscription prices, and what would be something that we could offer that wouldn't piss them off if we took it away, if we gave them something from the high end of the subscription value at the low end to get them excited. And so I'm trying to think if we offer them if we add the features, you can't really give somebody a feature and then take it away. So it might be something along the services side of the platform to help them get up and running. It costs us some money to do it, but then they also get more exposure to other features. It would be risky and cost us something, but it might win some friends. I don't know.
What kind of features are you thinking about?
Well, to offer more success services, so like setup and some support and consulting that normally you wouldn't get until you did a higher paying plan, offer it with the lower paying plan, because they would also be exposed to a better successful implementation and also learn about features that they're not paying for in their lower level plan. But we could say, we get more time with them to say, you get reporting if you decide to upgrade in the future, but without really pushing it, they give exposure, and they're more likely to be successful on their lower level plan implementation.
That sounds great. I mean, and I think if you do time base, you base it on as a limited time.
Like run the offer for 90 days, like whatever certain period of time.
You get the enhanced service for 30 days.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That sounds like a good one. Yeah. Anybody else? Test idea?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Joe from Evolving. So have you tested whether when you used, say, pricing, let's say three different or four different prices or range of prices, did you discover that there were optimizations by the way you configured your pricing?
So the way that we did the Star Club Rewards testing was that the user would only ever see one pricing. We didn't offer a selection of prices. We offered the same thing for $9.95 and $24.95. It's the same product. We just had, depending upon the random number, is what price you got. We also tested trial periods. We did 3, 7, 14, and 30-day trials, and 0-day trials. And 30-day trial turned out to be the best. We also did monthly versus annual, and that one was actually quite close in terms of pricing, because if we took an annual price of $49, was about the same as our monthly lifetime price when we got that, but it had a much lower conversion rate. And so that was.
So was there a specific number that was like a motivator, like $9.99 versus?
No, so the $12 one was $12 flat, no 95. That ended up being our champion. So we tested different versions, 95 or $12 flat, and the nickel didn't seem to matter. Yeah, good one.
Anybody else?
Come on, some other test. Something you're gonna do. Blow the socks off it.
How about pay what you want instead of freemium?
Oh, that's a good one. What's the band that did that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. That's an interesting one. instead of free. Pay what you want. Yeah, I think that's good. So could you take them off that? How would you mitigate the risk?
3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, my name is Jordan, and I work at TradeShift. And the idea was borrowing from your brand recognition. We do a lot of sales outreach emails, and I figured it might be a good idea to send a vertical specific email to the enterprise customers that we're trying to onboard by telling them that somebody in their market, one of their competitors, some known brand uses our software. It's a financial services thing, so it's not like there's a lot of motion in the market. And test it by picking one brand, one vertical, and running ads as a proxy. See if you're able to get an uptick from
I would
brand
do it in
recognition.
the email.
Do it in the email in particular?
I would start with the email. Yeah.
Why?
The ads are much harder to target. I mean, if you've got email and you know what vertical they're in already, I would go with the email. But
Cool.
either
Thank
way
you.
might work. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. So we did in the solar example, we did another really good tool that you should all be aware of and maybe try is Google Consumer Insights. You can spend $100 and you can ask all kinds of questions of very targeted select people. So we did some tests with, so talking about brand, I did a test where I said, which of these brands would you choose to go solar? None of the above, Solar City, Complete Solar, Virgin Solar, and Varengo Solar. And Virgin Solar came out on top, or slightly lower than Solar City. And this was a play to potentially have us license Virgin's branding as a version of it. And so I faked up a logo and used Google Consumer Insights to get some data to then go and approach Virgin and say you could jump into this market if you like, and you'll be number 2 in the market straight away. They didn't go for it, but very powerful tool to use. And you can test out branding messages like that. We did another test where we asked, which of these solar companies would you choose? And we had a description. And the difference between the descriptions was one was backed by Google and the other wasn't. And they gave us a 20% improvement in the company that was backed by Google, which tangentially we were, because the money that we were using for solar was part of a Google clean tech fund. Again, Google doesn't like using their brand, so it wasn't actually super useful because we couldn't do it. But if you can find a good way to use a brand, it can be very, very powerful.
There's another test where simply change the color.
Try it. I mean, maybe, yeah. 10% sounds like a lot for a red button, but maybe.
What's reasonable?
I think 2%, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, compare, yeah.
Compared to a blue button.
Okay, sure. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay. Yep.
10% there.
Yep. So another, in the same vein kind of test that I've seen that makes a big difference, doing multivariate tests on finding all kinds of different elements like the colors of the button. Captions under photos, very, very powerful. When people go and look at a page, before they read the headline, they go and read the caption under the photo. And so using that caption under the photo to get your message across can be very powerful. That's the thing that's most read on many pages. You pick that caption under the photo. Because that's what, we like looking at photos. We like understanding it. And even if it's a little bit out of context, that helps. Anybody else? Crazy idea? Extreme challenge? Free? Brand?
I'm with a company called Map Decisions, and we have a platform for the public works departments of cities to inspect their assets. And one of the markets that we'd like to get into is because governments are slow to subscribe. Is they're big consulting firms that have many small, tiny governments as their clients. So right now we have it's a subscription, $3,000 a year, and go ahead, use the software, inspect your assets. And most of our customers, or all of them, are in Pennsylvania because that's where it's based.
Okay.
But it's tempting to tell these consulting firms that have lots of cities, like, hey, instead of charging you $3,000 a year, how about we just charge you 15 cents per asset, and then you go charge the city $1 per asset, so you can make money off it. But it's scary. The CEO is scared to change it because we already got these $3,000 a year customers that are paying the bill. So maybe the idea is just test it for California, so we don't
Delaware
lose.
or Idaho. We
Yeah.
don't do California.
Yeah.
Limit your risk, right? Yeah, yeah. No, great idea. Yeah, pick a city and say it's free for a year in Podunk, Iowa, or whatever. And see, and if you get a whole bunch of people, second year, you're starting to make money. Great idea. Okay. Any more? That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, we've got another one. Wait. Got another one.
Sorry, I got one more. This was a fun one. It was a mobile app, but there was a control panel that showed up pretty nicely on an iPad. And so the idea, we never ran the test. Company died before we got a chance to do it. But the idea was a free iPad to run the control panel on if you sign up for the subscription service. You know, it's a funny thing in B2B, right? The iPad is the company's asset, but the person who uses it is kind of theirs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I have a question. So when you were talking about the 50% test, and there was a lot of internal debate about it, I know at previous companies I've worked at, we wanted to run e-com offers like that, and we'd get massive pushback from sales because they'd say, oh, it's going to jeopardize our deals.
Yep.
You're going to mess up our $50,000 account we're going to bring in for your stupid, e-com. How do you sort of deal with that internally? Is it that we're going to limit it to a small geography somewhere where no one's ever heard of to sort of not jeopardize those deals, or what sort of
If you've got a channel like that, I was actually reading DirecTV does that for their $19.99 a month. The only way you can get that is by phoning in. You have to talk to a salesperson. So you could limit it by channel or geography. Those are both ways of doing that, I think. Yeah.
Is that sort of getting people comfortable internally and selling sort of these radical tests internally is sort of the risk mitigation piece?
It's a huge
best
part
way to
because
get it through.
Yeah, you won't be able to run it unless you get the buy-in from the sales and the CEO and the CFO and all the people who are looking at this. And it's scary because this is a huge change. You learn a lot, but it's scary. And so you have to come forward with those risk mitigation ideas in place to have that rational conversation. But geography, time, cohorts only, you can't, you could, on direct mail, for example, you could only send it to certain people. That's another way of segmenting people. You could choose the people you want to give it to. Other ways to do it. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope that was informative.